it is also the prerogative of government to introduce amendments to the bill. So after several rounds of discussions and talks, joint drafting committee, all-party meetings one-on-one with other political parties, another all-party meeting, etc., etc., government introduced a bill in the Lok Sabha based on the Standing Committee's recommendations, but because the amendments were too numerous, we introduced a newly drafted bill. That bill, you will kindly remember, was opposed by the BJP in the Lok Sabha. They introduced amendments, they voted in favor of their amendments, and ultimately they voted against the bill. In the process, government accepted a few suggestions of the opposition. And the normal practice is, when government accepts an opposition amendment, government introduces the official amendment and the opposition's amendment is withdrawn. And that is how crucial amendments were adopted in the Lok Sabha. For example, the proviso to clause 1, subclause 4. Another example is the deletion of clauses 2 and 3 of section 24. Another amendment was the amendment of the definition of public servant to keep out the Army, Navy, Air Force and the Coast Guard. These suggestions were accepted by government and official amendments were introduced. Ultimately, the bill was passed with the BJP voting against the bill. It's a specious argument to say that the BJP supported the Lokpal Bill. The BJP did not. That's on the record. But because they had a certain number of votes, they defeated the Constitution Amendment Bill. If they had more numbers, or if they could muster more support, they would have defeated the Lokpal Bill also in the Lok Sabha. But while the Constitution Amendment Bill was defeated, the Lokpal Bill was passed. We took that bill as amended to the Rajya Sabha. The same political parties that are in the Lok Sabha are also in the Rajya Sabha. The bill was passed in the Lok Sabha on the 27th. The bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha on the 28th. And we offered to start the discussion immediately. They said, no, we cannot start the discussion on the Lokpal Bill and the Whistleblowers Bill together. We must have separate discussions. We said, fine, let's start the discussion on one of the bills at least now. We have 2-3 hours, and we will use those 2-3 hours effectively. They said, no, the bill can be discussed only tomorrow. Therefore, the House adjourned on the 28th. On the 29th, discussion started. 187 amendments were introduced by members of the opposition and other political parties. And I've never heard of that before. In the first house, one can expect a certain number of amendments. But once the first house passes a bill with a few amendments, in the second house, since it is the same set of political parties which are represented, one can expect maybe 1 or 2 or 3 amendments. I can't recall any example where 187 amendments were introduced in the second house, in this case Rajya Sabha, and the last of those amendments was presented at 6 p.m. on the 29th. Now, can anyone make sense of 187 amendments in a short space of time? Can anyone analyze them, classify them, distill them into a set of amendments which could be considered by the government for acceptance or could be considered by the government for rejection? I think the moment they introduced 187 amendments and gave the last of the amendments at 6 p.m., it was pretty clear to anyone familiar with parliamentary proceedings that it was not their intention to pass the bill. The intention was to scuttle the bill in the Rajya Sabha. Having failed in the attempt to scuttle the bill in the Lok Sabha, they struck upon this ingenious device of 187 amendments to scuttle the bill in the Rajya Sabha.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone. Fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.